communities. So African American, Latino American. We're trying to grow the pages if you know of any Native American. We also have a growing LGBT, so individuals who have identified themselves as such. And I think one of the things that can be hard is sometimes people don't readily comprehend what communities if they sometimes blog about these topics, particularly if you blog about social issues or social justice. Any of those issues are great connectors to diversity. So that also includes individuals who focus on immigration or first generation issues. If you focus on socioeconomic disparity issues, that's also a growing community that we're focusing on diversity. So it's not just about what I call the obvious, faces in the room. Is that as we break down one barrier, so we've been able to have some very healthy conversations in the last decade or two about more women in science, more black people in science, more Latino people in science. But there's still a lot of the people who, now that we're aware of that, there's still some more people that's not in the audience or they don't feel comfortable discussing their issues. Individuals with disabilities. This is also a part of the diversity community. Individuals who identify themselves as LGBT. What about individuals, what about Native American bloggers, which I became personally kind of, I don't know, the bell rang and you can't unring a bell. Like after going to the SACNAS conference, which is the Society for the Advancement of Hispanics and Native Americans in Science, the paucity of Native American science bloggers, who are they? It never even crossed my mind to think about that. What about Asian Americans, South Asians, and all those different ethnic communities? What about Eastern Europeans? All these unique styles that come to the table. What about people who focus on, higher education and those issues in higher education? How do we get diverse students, particularly in urban campuses where the minority population that they once served 60 years ago is a completely new population. Now they're dealing with first generation communities and children who are immigrants. So it's still minority serving, but it's a completely different culture of who they're serving now. And so if you work at an institution like that, you have some really great insight to talk about how do we deal with these issues? How are you bridging these cultural divides between students or, the changing over of communities, particularly with immigration status. So
Internet Explorer may be active there. I saw it blinking before.
You think you saw it blinking?
I don't know.
Here it is. Here we go. So diversity bloggers, and so you can see how it's organized here. So I am willing to wager everybody in here has an opportunity to have their blog added to this list somewhere. And so as I'm talking about this, but this opportunity to talk about action items, and the little sheet I have there is actually fillable. I'll type in things as we need to. Like if you have some ideas, or if you just want to simply tell us about some extra blogs. See, the Diversity in Science Blog Carnival was started, it was born out of this as well, where we focus on basically the people who do science.
Scroll all the way down.
Scroll all the way down? Oh, instead of just clicking on that?
Or click on that.
We'll click on that. Here it is. So the Diversity in Science Blog Carnival, which, before I go any farther, is there anyone in here who needs a refresher on what a blog carnival is? So we're all starting there? So now this is focusing on the people who do science. And so each month we focus on a different topic or a different theme. It started off, and we still do what I call very simple, the low-hanging fruit. We can focus on the Diversity Month, African American History Month, where we encourage everybody. Talk about, what you normally talk about. Don't change what you talk about in your science blog, but find a way to connect that to express diversity. So African Americans in your field, or a mentor you may have had, or a scientist whose work you respect. The same thing can be done for Women's History Month, Latino History Month, Native American Heritage Month, ADA, American with Disabilities Act, Commemoration Month. Those are really good opportunities to talk about that. One of the things I also challenge, and if you look at that as connecting to education, because I worked for a time in a high school, kids have to do these, Affinity Month, book reports, and they talk about that. Encourage them to do one on a scientist, that's at least lived in the last 20 years. I love George Washington Carver, but if I get another George Washington, there have been black scientists since George Washington. So encourage them to focus on living, innovators in their field. Perhaps you can find an innovator in your field or a colleague that you've noticed at a meeting, a chance to raise their profile, because particularly when you think about the importance of role modeling. Role modeling is also about helping raise profiles so that one, people know they exist, and then two, helping people connect to them. So connecting opportunities to them and other people. And so that's one thing you can do. Yeah, Gabe?
And just on that, science makers, if people don't know, science makers is a...
Tell people about science makers. It's awesome.
Scroll down.
Is it like?
Because you may be in a department, if you're a scientist, you may be in a department where you don't have an African American person, and I don't remember seeing it on there on that. Anyway, so if you need, and then you can reach out to people who are working right now, who have a legacy and can speak,
Absolutely. So, and with that, at some point, so Alberto has a sign-up sheet if you want to add your name to the list, and we can start sharing information about that. That's actually one of my, so science makers.
Danielle,
Yes.
in particular,
Just go ahead and say it.
if you want to host a diversity science carnival blog, either from suggestions that are already on the site or suggestions you have of your own, or if you just want to contribute a post. And then we'll also talk about the SACMAS conference. Or I'll just say it.
Yeah, just
You mentioned the SACMAS conference. We had a specific session on blogging, and there's an article write-up in the newsletter that I distributed. There's also an article write-up on the LGBTQ for Pride Month carnival blog that we had. But so we're trying to encourage bloggers to come to the SACMAS conference to help us mentor and train younger writers. And especially if you're a faculty member and you want to recruit undergraduates for your grad programs anyway, SACMAS is a great place. And I know for faculty, we could possibly get travel awards for you. So if you're interested, please indicate on this also.
Yeah. So this is the part where I can fill this in. These are just ideas, recommendations, and I bet you all are doing a lot of things like that. So related to, so there's two ways to do this. There are things we can do, action items, because I know sometimes we like to feel like, well, what can I do? This was great, got inspired, I'm on board, but what's next? Well, there's a couple things you can do. From an online perspective, I say do something really, really simple, like participate in the Diversity and Science Carnival. At the very least, write a post and submit it to the carnival when we have these carnivals coming up. Host a carnival at your site. Another thing I think is really great is post someone else to write a guest post at your site. Would you mind talking? Site has this awesome, what I call model, a network model, where they host every 2 weeks a different guest blogger, not at anyone's site, but at the entire network. Could you tell folks about that?
Yeah, so I blog over at the group scientopia.org. And actually, there's a bunch of other Scientopians over here. I see Suska, I see Janet. Yes, and every 2 weeks we change up our guest blog. We have a guest blog, and we invite people to come and blog for more exposure than they might get at their normal site. And it goes in 2 week increments, and it's been really, really great both for adding new voices to our group, but also for getting people who might be in a kind of smaller blog more exposure.
And so that's a really great thing. So, or you could either recreate that model, which I think is an awesome model. And so you have the benefit of an entire science network there, and she's essentially made it available to different bloggers. And so there are people who may not be science bloggers, but they have some really interesting content that's a great bridge. And it introduces science folks who are already interested in science to new blogs out there, new individuals, new interests, and new ways to kind of connect it, what I call integrate their information across curricular activities. And so I think that's a really great model. That's one action item. What are some other things I guess you all have done online that maybe... Just go ahead and talk.
Can you talk before we break out to much larger?
Okay, I was just kind of going with it. You want to come up here?
No.
So, wait a minute. Now you throw me off. Yeah, I'll get to it. All right. So, I just want to wrap that up. So, these are just recommendations to give you action items. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask. I have an ask as an action item to get involved. I'm Khadijah. Britt and I have a nonprofit organization, Better Bio, and our whole mission is to connect the science that people need, connect communities to have healthy and productive lives. So we're working around water quality, the secret sugars in our foods, and we need people blogging about stuff, but we also need you actually sharing your expertise, giving comments. We have a student blog called Mad Science Magazine, where high school students write. It's all, it's all high school student staff from a bunch of different schools. We're working with, right now we have pilot programs in Cambridge and New York City, and talking to people in Baltimore, Maryland, but we definitely want to expand. And the whole purpose of that is to kind of create a bridge between diverse people who kind of made it, right? People who've gotten into science and doing this work and thinking about these things, and people who want to but don't necessarily know how it relates to them. So we got betterbio.org, madscimag.com. Holla at me.
So I'm gonna write that down as yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing we haven't talked about too much is, and a lot of my background has been in making conferences and meetings more disability friendly or accessible. And I think we can actually do that with our blogs as well by, for example, having really informed captions of your photos, because if someone's using a screen reader, then having a really having a caption that actually tells people what, say, a photo is really useful. But there are a number of other things you can do, and one thing I'm sort of noticing is that there's with disability access, and if you build it, they will come sort of perspective that really works. And if you do things to make your community more accessible, you will get more participation, but you have to be really proactive. You can't just wait for someone to come up and say, why is there no wheelchair accessible spaces in this conference? That's not how it works. So we should, just something to think about and include in our conversation, I think.
Is there another hand? Sure. Yes.
I'm going to toss out a plug for a place called mentornet.net.
Internet?
Mentor.
Mentor. I'm sorry. Yeah.
.net. And that actually has been around for over 20 years now, and it's an online mentoring program for basically underrepresented groups in science and engineering. And they're always short of mentors. And it's basically an e-mentoring program, and they have a really great training program. So when you sign up, it's not just that you get matched with some student and they're like, okay, discuss, talk science. They actually give you prompts every week, like, hey, one thing you might want to talk about this week would be blah. And so they actually help you start the conversation, but the purpose of it is they've actually expanded now to include mentoring from freshmen, undergraduates, all the way up to postdocs. Basically to get them to talk to somebody who isn't at their institution, who may be in industry, who may be in what academia likes to think is an alternate career. It's the real world for the rest of us. And I work in academia, so I can crash it. And it's really a great group, and just promoting that and making it known is really helpful, especially because it's not